visit, and we hope it's worthwhile. Thank you very much. Thank you for your very detailed introduction. So you're welcome to visit us. And I hope that all the netizens of our CNTV news, you are welcome to visit Zhihuasi Temple. Now let me introduce what I'm entering into. The name of this hall is Zhihuasi Temple. And right here in this hall, I'd like to give you a brief introduction of this Zhihuasi Temple. Zhihuasi Temple was built in the Ming-dynasty, and it was the family temple of the eunuch. And this stone plaque has been inscribed with the story why and how this temple has been built. That eunuch is named Wang Zheng, and his profile is also carved here. And but I believe this gravestone can give you a very great idea about the status as well as the origin of the temple. These are the two tablets for the two major abbats who have worked in this temple. And inside this temple, there are also numerous state treasures. And overall speaking, the architectural style as well as the construction and the building itself in this temple are the treasures. Okay, let me design our route. We can visit in a clockwise way because as I can see, the doors are linked to each other directly. Next, okay, let's move on to the Zhang Dian or the Zhang Hall, where you can find a massive wooden statue or treasure. And to introduce this treasure, we have an expert here who works with the China Fine Arts Academy. He specialized in traditional Chinese classics, and he will give us an elaboration of what are housed in this hall. Professor Chen, good evening. Thank you for your time. So could you please say hello and introduce yourself to our friends? Hello, I'm Professor Chen. I'm working with the China Fine Arts Academy, and I specialize in the study of cultural heritage. It gives me a pleasure to meet you. Okay. Since we are here in this hall, we are to observe and view this cultural heritage object. So what do we call it in the Buddhist religion? And the name of it is that we call it revolving scripture shelf. It functions as a bookshelf to store and put the scriptures, and as you can see that each drawer can be pulled out and the scriptures can be put into it accordingly. And for the whole structure, it's a combination of wooden and stone sculpture. It helps to express some Buddhist theory and spirit. The striking feature of this object is it's a religious object, and it's a vivid embodiment of the Buddhism as well as the Confucianism. At the very top, you can also see that characters are inscribed and carved on it. And let me give you a quote. The heaven, the earth, the king, and the emperor are all from one family. And also, you can find some figures or the data. And for this structure, it has 9 horizontal rows and 5 vertical lines, and which can also reflect that this temple is a very highly revered temple back in the Ming Dynasty. From your perspective, the very elaborate design of this structure lies in which element? Okay, let me turn to the very top. From the very top to the bottom, it's covered with the statues of the Buddhas and the gods from various sections, and also can find the lotus flower, the golden fish, the 8 goddesses of mercy, as well as the lions, which we call they are the auspicious animals. Like the other day when I was here, I said that there was an elephant in the design, and when I visited the Forbidden City, I used to learn that elephant also mean good vision or an auspiciousness, and which is also a prominent element in the fine traditional Chinese culture. In each hall, we can find some exhibitions like this one. For this piece of work, it's actually a painting, a work of the roof where the Buddha is housed. Okay, first of all, I believe it's quite visible that the roof is designed in a very elaborate and a beautiful way. It's marvelously detail-oriented, and the designs, the floral patterns, as well as the painting objects, all mean good things. They bid for well. And you can see with regard to the color, the red, golden yellow, blue, they all represent the noble colors. And regarding the techniques employed in creating this work, the stone carving and the gold broil can also be found this. And let me take this for an example. The whole image is illuminant and it's remarkable. And I believe this also represents the high standard of aesthetics and craftsmanship back in that period. And I believe they are made by the royal artisans. Okay, let's move on. It's a circular design. Yes, you're right. Because people can walk around it, and which have also the same meaning as of your revolve for your benefits. Let me tell you a tip. When you walk to this position, and while you turn your head back, you can get a very clear idea of the picture right above the top of the statue, the shelf. Another question is that for this Zhihuasi Temple, there are 3 wells and there are 3 major scriptures. 2 of them are lost and they are being preserved overseas. And what's the significance of that? And I have to say that this what we are seeing in this hall, they constitute an integrated complex from the roof to this wooden structure, as well as the different drawers and the carvings that we see everywhere. They all work together to produce what's very significant in the religion. And I have to say this is the unique and the most valuable statue in the world. Let's move on to this hall. It's the 智化殿 or 智化 Hall. It's a venue for music playing, and I hope you can make some comments when we enjoy some performance later on. Okay, let's move on. The first thing you visit this hall is you will feel very enjoyed to appreciate some national and traditional Chinese music.
Thanks for the performance, Mr. Hu. I know that Mr. Hu is the 27th generation successor of the Jing music. So today we're happy to listen to the Jing music come from the Ming-dynasty. Can Mr. Hu introduce us some of the features of the Jing music? After we built the temple in 1444, then it passed down to now. In this over 500 years, we are using the very traditional method to teach the music, the word to the face-to-face teaching of the music. We continue to use the traditional way to perform the music, the same style, the same kind of tunes. So it's a highlight, and many experts pay great attention to the value to this Jing music. We would like to welcome the public to come here to appreciate the Jing music. Thank you. Earlier, the viewer asked a question. So where is the Zhihuasi Temple? Because they want to visit. It's near the Jingbao Street. You can just search Zhihuasi Temple or Beijing Cultural Exchange Museum, and then you can get to here. We will continue the tour with Mr. Chen. I want to show him some treasure, but I think most of you haven't seen before. It's a refined treasure here. It's a wall painting from Ming-dynasty. Till now, it's around 570 years old. So we want to ask Professor Chen about his comments about this wall painting. For this painting, you can see the structure, the layout of this painting is very nice, and also very high skills of the painting. Also, it shows the features of Ming Dynasty painting. So what is the technique they are using? maybe I'm not an expert in this. I only know like sketches, this kind of painting method. So what is the method for this one? It's a very traditional way to make a painting of the Buddha. It's a line drawing and then color the lines with color. You can see the main Buddha is in the center. Even though this drawing has been kept for hundreds of years, but still it's in a very good quality. Yes, because we need really high standard condition in order to keep such kind of painting of Buddha. And this painting is also put into a temple, and the temple itself has more than 500 years of history. Very rarely seen for this kind of painting. Thank you very much. Thank you. And then we would like to introduce another special guest. You know, I have limited capability to introduce more knowledge about this museum. So today we introduce Mr. Hou from Beijing Ancient Architecture Bureau. Can you introduce? I'm a researcher from Ancient Architecture Research Center from Beijing. I have many years of experience in researching the ancient architecture. I'm responsible for maintain and renovate of ancient architecture. Let's continue the tour, Mr. Hou. We want to go back into the lobby. I would like to ask a question. Here we always learn that there were so many treasures in this temple. For example, the Kaizen. But in this one, we don't see any Kaizens here. Can you explain why? For the Kaizens, for most of the temples, in the center, above the Buddha, there is a Kaizen. It's a kind of decoration. So it's just like a well. However, for each kind of Kaizen, we have very refined decoration for the Kaizen to make it very exquisite. And we also have a very refined wooden engravement. Why we call it Kaizen? In ancient times, people will show shape like an alga to put it in the Kaizen. That's why people call it a Kaizen. So it's a very good interior decoration for the temple. So for ancient people, they also pay attention to the interior design, especially in the central part of the temple, right above the head of the Buddha. Actually, I saw many Kaizens in different museums and temples. For very important architecture, for example, like a temple, basically, in general, we will have a Kaizen. But here, we will see that there's some missing. It's such a pity. In Zhihuasi Temple, in the Wang Zhen bibliography, he said that we have used all the good things to build the temple. Meaning that from the appearance, you cannot see how much good things we have in this temple. It's just like a regular decoration. However, when you enter into the hall, you will see all the good things. So Kaizen is very popular and important for the temples in ancient times. I see some pictures for kaisens, very exquisite engraving. And all of the kaisens have different kind of color. In the 30s, some Americans, they love those kaisens too much. They know stealing is like not good. They gave us a lot of explanation. They're saying that we're just trying to purchase other things, but actually they are not. Some of the professors at that time visited China. They had a job. They're very familiar with those cultural heritage dealers. If they want something, and then they will talk to the dealer, and then will dismantle the kaisen secretly, and then ship to their country. We need to have some like professionals to dismantle the kaisen. There's no glue of the kaisen. You need to have some professionals to dismantle it. So for the two kaisens, we were missing. 2 out of 3 were missing. We only have 1 in the scriptures hall, the Zhang hall, because they didn't think that is a good one, so we only have 1. It's such a pity. We consider kaisen is like a very good treasure for China, so it's such a pity that we missed it. And now we cannot take it back. Let's continue the tour. For us, we need professionals to tell the truth, the differences. Now let's go to the outdoors. I also heard that sometimes you can visit Zhihuasi Temple at night, but still you cannot see the roof clearly because we are using the black tile, black glazed tile. Because it is the family temple for the eunuch. There are several levels for the color of the tile. The highest level is yellow, followed by green and blue. The lowest level is black. That's why Wang Zhen said that we're using all the good things for the temple, but from the outside you cannot tell because he's using the black tile. He used all the money to build the inside. We also need to consider his social status. He's a eunuch, so he cannot be too aggressive, exaggerate. Let's continue. So when people come here, according to the name, the Cultural Exchange Museum, first we will think of the cultural relics, and also we'll talk about some like knowledge exchange. So for you, in the future, are you going to come here to, for example, to host some knowledge share section? Well, I'm very interested in sharing some knowledge about ancient architecture. For this temple, it got the most information about the architecture from the Ming-dynasty. We don't have a lot architecture from the Ming-dynasty. For example, the imperial palace, due to some wars happening in the past, it's not a complete one. And for the Ming tombs, due to some wars at the end of the Ming Dynasty, also not a complete site. And also for a long time, we do a lot of work for a renovation for those architecture. So some of the architecture, the structure, actually were missing during the renovation. I also know that for Zhihuasi Temple, it used to be one of the first group of national key cultural relic in China, just like the Great Wall and the Imperial Palace. Yes, because for this temple, all of the designs and appearance are actually from Ming-dynasty. And also, we have some very good quality color painting inside of the hall.
And in the Song Dynasty, in Qing Dynasty, they all have published some construction or architectural publications or books, but the only exception is Ming Dynasty. So that's the reason this temple works as a very valuable evidence or clue for us to understand the Ming Dynasty architectural style. For the Yuan Dynasty, it's a pity to say that they have rooted out some of the architectural styles they have inherited from the previous dynasties. But for the artisans, they are making all the efforts to keep alive the architectural styles from the Song Dynasty, but I believe they have not succeeded as they planned. For this structure, the architectural characteristics from the Song Dynasty and from the Ming Dynasty are also evident here, but they are not prominent. Even in that case, Zhihuasi Temple is the only one, or the only notable one, that can be a vivid demonstration of the Ming Dynasty architectural culture. Since this temple is also serving as a cultural museum exchange place, so there are also some anecdotes which says that for this city and for this temple, it has sunken in some way over the course of the past several centuries. Let me correct you. For anyone human have inhabited, there are always variations in how deep or the elevation of the different civilization. Like for us, when we do the archaeological work, when we cave out some objects, we can immediately determine from which dynasty they are from, because for each dynasty they have their unique elevation. What I mean by the elevation is the horizon. Like the Baita temple, and they are also from the Ming. They are also from the Ming Dynasty, but they have inherited the foundation of that whole temple from the Yuan Dynasty. So when we compare the elevation or the horizon of the different temples or the different buildings, we can tell immediately from which era they are from. And like in our work, when we dig out some of the buried heritage objects, we can decide from which era they are from only by telling how deep they are buried. And my understanding is that I can also define it as one of the most important two-story building that's stemmed from the Ming Dynasty. Yes, you're right. But from your perspective, what special characteristics can you find in it? First, I have to say that very immediate to the eyes. The one characteristic is that they use a massive amount of the raw material, like the wood and the other materials, and also the arcs or the eaves. You have seen both in this hall and the other halls. They are rumored to have a decoration function, but for the temple from the Ming Dynasty, they are not serving any structural function, because in the past the whole structure looks like this way. For the early period architectural structures, they are made of clay walls or made of cement walls. They usually stand as high as 3 to 4 meters high, and just to facilitate the drainage in the rainstorm occasion. But ever since the Ming Dynasty, the eaves tend to be shorter, because they do not have to function as a water or a rainwater drainage system. And for this arched eave is discarded in the Ming Dynasty. And I believe those are the most prominent features of this building. Let's take a close-up look. And for this Zhihua temple, is not a religious venue. It's more of a cultural heritage itself. For this statue, Buddha statue, what's your first impression? One of the words I heard most today is gold and vivid decoration has been made to the statue. Yes, you're right. Let me tell you. The powder applying means that the brick powder, the glue, the bronze glue, they are mixed together to generate these kind of lines or bones where you are seeing on the surface. So this is what we call powder applying. So it's not actually it's not a powder applying. It's actually a squeezing, a powder squeezing, because it's a thick compound. And also, I believe in this way it can also testifies to the claim that to build this temple, its owner has exhausted its wealth in purchasing all the necessary raw materials. And for this wooden carve, we usually choose a precious kind of a wood, because that will be easier for the craftsman to carve up. And for the nanmu, they usually take more than 100 years to grow. And the second advantage of that wood is there is no hollow core inside the tree. And the third one is that nanmu is also called a natural anti-corrosive wood, because it's not subject to insect harming, or it's not subject to moisture damaging. And the density of the nanmu is also high. It's as high as the water, and that's the reason why it was adopted as the main raw material for statue in the Ming Dynasty. And for nanmu, it's a hard wood, and their cells are as hard as you can imagine. And I remember that you have also mentioned about to sticking gold skating, gold sticking. This is also one of the traditional Chinese techniques. It's not actually a gold sticking. I have to say. Usually we need to mix up the gold and mix it with a hard metal. And with that gold and heavy and the precious metal mixture, and you heat it up, and you roast it with a fire. And when it's soft, you apply it to the surface of the structure, and in that way it will attach very closely. So this is a kind of gold foil. For this gold foil, it weighs 2.8 grams per square meter. So you can imagine how thin we need it. It's like this. We used to make it by hammering up a piece of gold on a very thin piece of paper. And for the Buddha statue, we also need to apply some of the cement and polish it and attach the gold foil to the surface. So this is what you mean by the gold applying. Yeah. So it can be said that it's covered by gold. You're right. Gold foil is the main methods in building the statue. And for the roof, you can also take a look. Okay, later on, we will take our netizens to a place you may not visit when you visit this temple. I don't think so. Is it so? Okay, let's move and take a look. Let's move on to the second floor. In order to give you a clear view of this elaborate place, what they have done, they have installed this vertical big screen. So can we have okay, let's take a look from this screen how elaborate this temple is. I can take a picture for you, and you can show it to our netizens. What we are going to appreciate is a promo video clip. Okay, is it okay that we will come back a few minutes later and give them some time to adjust it? For this 1000 Buddha statue or niche, they are covered with I'm not actually so sure. It's covered by some material in gold color, but not necessarily gold foil. And for each of these niche, we call it kunmen, and it's where each Buddha is placed. And for each of these niche, the Buddha varies in their expression and in their identity. And for this whole wall of the niches, there are more than 10,000 Buddhas. So from the experience of this Buddha, for example, a look at this wall. The highest level of this work measures more than 3 meters high, and this is cutting. This is paper cut, not actually paper cutting, but wooden cutting for the window. Is something that will amaze you because we need to cover it up in very careful way, and with all this, you need to remember that this is a family temple for Wang Zheng.
Now we need to do something. We want to go back to the past. Maybe we can go inside? This way, please. It feels like we're going to the past right now. We need to go through this area. Now we're going to the second floor of the Buddha Pavilion. Push. We will use the secret path. Be careful. The step is not the original one. We put some protection here. We did a lot of work for the work preservation. Just check the material. It's fully made from the Ming-dynasty. The feature of Ming-dynasty is quite different from Qing dynasty. So for Qing, they will use different powders and the ash of the brick, and then we'll paste it on this column. But for Ming Dynasty, it's quite different. For this crack, we have a different name called Shen crack. The function for that is to protect the column here. Let's continue. Such a exquisite place. We never expect to visit here because not many people visit here. You can see the engravings here, very refined and detailed. We just talked about the missing of the Kaizen, and in this lobby we also miss one Kaizen and also the ceiling. We miss a lot of things, but now what do you think about this roof, this ceiling? Does it still look very good? For the ancient architecture, actually we can recover this. We can take some photos of the Kaizen and then we can copy another one and put it here. But for cultural relics, we don't make copies. So even though we miss the Kaizen, we just make it as it is. We don't want to make fake ones.
，So
And we also want to show the history of China. We need to remember such an exquisite piece was lost. Maybe we just consider it as a historic information. So to show that the Kaizen was stolen in the past. It's such a shame for Chinese people. They're not using the legal way to purchase it. For this Buddha, there are a lot of warriors here. Do you know some information about this warrior? You can see that it's very vivid. You can see the movement of this warrior. Actually, this warrior are not used as a supporting function. You can see that the warrior's back is attached to the foundation. So actually it's just a piece of supporting foundation, but they make it as a warrior to look very vivid. For the ancient architecture, we always put an warrior here. But here you can see that they have very good enriched facial expressions for the warrior. And all the area, you can see it, there are fine engraving here. For this one, we see a very nice lotus throne. Again, that's what I said. Wang Zhen threw all the investment into the interior design. He's quite corrupted actually. But he cannot make the outside of the temple beautiful, but he will invest for the interior design. And for this kind of engravings also shows the history. 8 treasures from the Buddhism. Very rarely seen. We don't even see it in the Imperial Palace. Not much engravings like that in the Imperial Palace, but it's a different style. But for this one, you can see that it's just a family temple, but they did a lot of work for the engravings. There is another feature for this architecture. For the second floor, you can see that instead of building it as a wood structure, they're using bricks. And also the bricks are built above the wooden beam. This is different compared to other buildings, using a wooden beam to support the bricks, meaning that the beam is strong enough to support the bricks. Just check another area. We can look up to the beam. You can see the coloring of the ceiling. It's quite classic in the Ming Dynasty. In Zhihuasi Temple, even though it's useless, but we maintain this structure for the Zhihuasi Temple. Let's go back. We have too many treasures here. Maybe we don't have enough time to introduce them one by one. So we want the viewers to have a visit in person. You know, in ancient times, people don't put too much emphasis on the stairs. It's not that everyone can enter into the temple. But I understand that lots of efforts has been put for the interior decoration for the temple. Just be careful. I'm very happy to visit here to see so many great things. This has a 500 years of history for this building. So many historic information inherited in this temple. So just as Imperial Palace and the Great Wall, so it's the one of the first group of key cultural relic protection sites in China. Thank you so much for your detailed introduction. Maybe say goodbye to our viewers. Thank you. See you next time. We will continue our tour to another area. Except for the ancient architecture here, and we have two exhibitions here in the Cultural Exchange Museum. We will go to the exhibition area to see what are the valuable things that we have here. And later we will have another expert. The VP of the Beijing Cultural Exchange Museum will be with us. One of the impressions for me is that we have a very beautiful scene here at night. You can see we have so many lamps here and with really fine paintings on the lamp. Except for the lighting function, the lamp itself looks beautiful. Here we can also see some exhibition board here, which explains the structure of the Ming architecture and also compare the differences of the architecture in Ming Dynasty versus Qing Dynasty. Next, we go to the Dodgy Hall. Let's welcome VP Yang. Maybe we can invite the VP to introduce some of the highlights of this hall. It's a temporary place to show some of the cultural relics. We have some Buddha's ancient coins and other ancient cultural relics. The first section showing some statues of the Buddha. This Buddha used to display in Zhihuasi Temple. The first one is a Bodhisattva. Also, we can see the Maitreya. It's very unique. All of these are also made of gilt bronze. Next one is the Guanyin Bodhisattva, also the gilt bronze. And these two are the wooden statue, the Guangmu warrior. This one is like a pottery feature and a very tall statue. And here also have a small area to demonstrate those mini-size statues of the Buddha. For this Buddha, at the beginning, it was made of wood. And later, we have some changes for it.
And for these two, I believe they are very famed gardens. This is from the Han Dynasty. These three are the statues of the Buddha. They used to be stored in the main hall, but they were transferred to this temporary exhibition hall ever since the exhibition is launched. And these are the utensils and the objects that are used in the temple. And for this one, I believe it's very big. It's an extraordinarily big, actually. Yes, you're right. And it's used when the monks are practicing religious routines. And they are all the original objects from the Zhihuasi Temple. They are from the Wanli 14th year. That's some time that can be traced back to 500 years ago. And for this one, right upstairs, when the Tathagata as well as the other Buddha's statues are amended, these paths have been found, and they are believed to have been used to make cow towels. And we have tried to find some silk manufacturers in Zhejiang and Suzhou, in those places, to try to find the most resembling silk to mimic the flora patterns on this pad. And let's move on. Those are the scriptures stored in the temple. And this is a Ming-bei scripture. This scripture is stored where you have seen that scripture shelf. And it's stored right in one of those numerous drawers. This is one chapter of the scripture. So they are all valuable treasures. You're right. And what's very noteworthy is that they are preserved in a very good way, and no damage, or at least no visual damage, can be found here. And for this paper, it's more yellow in color than the previous one. Yes, they may be used different paper making techniques. And for this painting, this is a painting depicting the Buddha are preaching to their apprentices. And this printing is also unique to our traditional printing technique. And for this scripture, the name of this scripture is that it indicates this scripture is custom made for this Zhihuasi temple, which means it's published and printed only for this temple. And because this temple was also taken as a royal temple. And for this picture, those are the coins from the Song Dynasty, from the Tang Dynasty, and there are smaller ones. And for this one, it's very, I have to say that it's made of silver. It's from the India last dynasty, and you can find the letters and the characters from the Indian dynasty back then. And this is not an ordinary piece of paper. It's actually a paper note from the Ming Dynasty, or this is a modern check. So those are the porcelains we have collected. The blue and white vase, the flower pot, and the porcelain statue. And this is one of our most time-honored printing technique. They are used to print the books, the classics, and this is dedicated to printing the scriptures. It's very common in Tibet. You're right. It's such a valuable thing that can be preserved, and they can last all the way to this modern today. So that's a temporary exhibition hall. Yes, you're right. So you mean that ever since tomorrow, once once or twice a year, you will hold some exhibition. You're right. And for this hall, it will be dedicated to cultural exchanges. Okay. Have you visited the Dodgy Hall? Not yet, because of the tight schedule. And for this drum and bell tower, what's the special characteristics or features about this tower? For the bell tower, it's made by the radio, or it's made by X-ray. For the infrared ray, they can detect if any visitor is present, and they can send a voice or a sound that can make you reminiscent of the bell singing. So this is a picture of how the bells are structured. From the very top, we call it a gate, and also the main body. The main body are composed of several sections, and each section can produce a different sound. Let's turn to this picture. So right here, they are the letters or the characteristics or characters that have been used to write those scriptures. And here we try to pronounce the different Buddhist scripture letters. And for these, what you are saying above, for each of those religious character, that represent the name of one god or goddess. And for different blocks, they are displaying the information of the different section of the bell to pay respect to different god or goddess. Have you heard of that bell sound? The big bell, the big drum. This is let's move on to the drum part. Here we house the biggest drum in this temple, and the drum is a very functional object. But for this one, I don't think they are used to inform the time. But nowadays, they are collected by the museum and demonstrated as a cultural objects. Okay, thank you very much. So let's just say goodbye to Mr. Yang. Thank you very much. And so all the netizens, our friends, you're welcome to visit this temple. So today we have visited so many halls, but we spent most of the time inside or indoors. We have observed the murals, the statues, the sculptures, as well as the different elaborate architectural objects. And I believe you must have been deeply impressed with what you have seen. And for this winter, it's not freezing cold winter because no snow is coming. But if there is a snow, you do have to visit Zhihuasi Temple, where you will find a stunning view. Thank you very much. Thank the CCTV for broadcasting, and thank you the netizens for your viewing. Thank you very much.